Hello there. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be Russian. Don't ask me why, I don't know. But I remember that I wanted to be Russian. It seemed to me the faraway place, perhaps the most exotic place that there could ever be. I don't know. But I wanted to be Russian for the longest time. Then something happened in the late 50s and early 60s, where in the orphanage where I was, we had to pray for Russia. Every day we prayed for the conversion of Russia. No one explained to us what was wrong with Russia exactly. In my little mind, I understood this conversion of Russia, that something had gone wrong, obviously, with Russia. But it wasn't necessarily a pagan place as I understood it at the time, but the word conversion meant that they had to come back to the fold of Christianity, something like that. That is the way I understood it. I don't know why that happened, although now I see that there were certain things going on in the Vatican at the time with the, what is it, the third secret of Fatima or something or other, but I don't remember praying for the conversion of Russia all those years. My goodness. Okay, then I forgot all about Russia. And then in the 70s, Russia came back to my mind because I read an article written by one of the great Russian writers, but I don't remember who. I don't know whether it was Pushkin or Chekhov, but one of the major ones. I've been trying to find that article and I can't find it, probably because I don't remember the author. In which there was literary criticism, and he was talking about two characters, the character of Don Quixote in Spanish literature and that of, I think it was Macbeth, but I'm not sure of that either. But it was one of the main characters in one of Shakespeare's plays. And he was giving his reasons why his, I think he said something like his Russian soul prompted him, urged him to actually admire Don Quixote more than the character in Shakespeare's play. And he goes on to give the reasons, but I remember thinking, okay, but the Russian soul, that it came much more naturally to him. He wasn't talking about the writing or the play or the novel. Just the character of the protagonist. He admired that more, what we could learn from Don Quixote than what we could learn from the other character. Anyway, I don't remember anything more than that. So Russia sort of came back, and then I myself developed throughout my years a sort of an admiration and a liking very much for Russian literature. And I don't know, I think I sort of understand it. I understand the characters, but not at an intellectual level. I understand them, as if it was the literature of my own country. I understand the characters. I don't know, but anyway, I love it and I admire it, and I learn a lot from it. All right, so then I forgot about Russia again. Continue reading its literature. But then as a teacher, I had some Russian students. I work for an international school, and Russian students doing their A-levels here in England and then online too. Quite a few students from Russia. And sometimes from time to time, most of them learning either politics or sociology or something like that, and which is what I taught. And sometimes, every now and then, we would engage in conversation. I would ask them about the experience of their grandfathers, for example, whether they talked to them about, the old Soviet Union and what they said to them, and they would tell me stories about their grandparents. Of late, and before these wars started, for some reason, the war that is going on at the moment, for some reason I found myself, without much reason for it, but nevertheless thinking that if I were 30 years younger and I didn't have to depend on my pension, that I would actually emigrate to Russia. I would try to do so. I told my daughters that. Are you insane? And I said, no. I think that is where I would feel at home now, more than in the West. At home in the sense of being a country that is not going socially, culturally in the same way, in the same direction that the West is going at the moment. I have dealt with this in other videos about the direction, where we are going to end up anyway, if not careful. A country that actually respects the old traditional way of life, the family. That's all way perhaps what we had in the West in the up to the 50s, something like that. I think I would feel at home there. But during COVID, I thought I'm going to learn Russian. And I think I gave up in the second lesson, because being of a certain age, just looking at the alphabet, I said, no, I don't think this is possible. But one thing that I notice is that I became sort of, how can I say this? I admire the way they have dealt with the past, with their past, the good and the bad, especially the bad. It's easy enough to deal with the good, in the history of your own country, and you're proud of it. But it's when you have done things as a country or as a culture that perhaps you're not so proud of. And the way they're dealing with it. And the way they're dealing with it, as I see it, I could be terribly wrong on this, but this is the way I see it. That they don't try to hide it, they don't try to change it, they don't try to put a good spin to it, but they look at it face to face. What I'm trying to say is that, for example, in in the history of our countries, we have, let's say, statues, okay? They haven't gone around throwing away, dismantling whatever statues might be to Stalin or Lenin or something. They could have done that. Oh my goodness, we repudiate these people, we but they haven't done so. Not because they think it was a good time, not because they think it's that they have to continue to be exalted, but because they have accepted that it is part of their history, and they remain there as a reminder. Look at it. Is when you have to actually face in the mirror, that boil, on the top of your nose. It's there as a reminder. There was some French author who said to the French, every time that there was a change, a new republic or a change in something major in government, that they would bring down the streets, that the street would be named after a famous general on this battle or that other battle or something. And they would bring those names down and give the street some other name. And he laughed. It was probably tyrant, I don't know. But and he laughed, saying, "Why do you spend all that time bringing all those names down? You're only going to have to put them up again." In other words, even if it's not the best part of your history, just have it there reminding you that actually happened. And I admire that, even though, for example, in the parades that they have, the military parades or whatever, they when they were celebrating the end of the Second World War, they were carrying the Russian flag, but then also behind it the Soviet Union's flag, the old red flag. And that was because it was the Soviet Union that had defeated the Nazis. And so they were not scared into saying, oh no, we must repudiate everything that the Soviet Union has done. No, there they were. In other words, accepting the history of what had happened. I think that takes courage as a nation, especially when everyone is putting the finger, pointing the finger at you, to say, no, this is who we are. And I compare that to my own country, my country of birth, Spain, or even to Germany. Because in Germany we see that they haven't come to terms quite with what had happened, or if they have, is by renouncing it so completely. Yes, that's okay, but going over to the other extreme. You know what I'm talking about. In the case of Spain, they have done the opposite as Russia has done. Let me dwell in this a little bit. I don't want to bore you with one particular country here, Spain. I'm just trying to make a point. This country, Spain, in Europe, for the longest time, was of course associated with Catholicism. Yeah. And what happened in the 16th century was that Spain said no to Protestantism. You shall not enter here. Yes, you heard of the Inquisition and everything else. Never mind. But they said no, not here. But that not here, that what eventually developed into secularism or even anti-Christianity, came nevertheless into the country not through a Protestant revolution, but through the French invading Spain with Napoleon in 1812, bringing with them this anti-clerical, anti-Catholic, anti-religious, anti-everything that Spain up to that time was that is what Spain was, Catholic Spain. Yeah, so they came to Spain this new the moderns way of looking at things through secularism. It was like a virus that infected the psychology of the country. Just to give you an idea, in the 19th century, there were 3 wars in Spain. They were almost like mini civil wars. With the Carlists, the ones who were traditionally Catholic, in other words, the old traditional Spain, okay, wanting the descendant of the Habsburgs, and the other side, the modern side, the secular side, the Bourbon side of the monarchy. 3 wars. The modern side won the argument, and so we had, a frontal confrontation against the Catholic Church with all the usual things that go along with it, so many thousands upon thousands of priests killed and all the rest of it. The taking over of church property and all that. But this thing continued in the history and the psychology of the country, and to actually end up in what you will call the Spanish Civil War, which the traditionalists in Spain call the Last Crusade. What happened afterwards, from the 1980s onwards, is what is happening, I see, in the Baltic countries, for example, vis-a-vis Russia, in that the whole of traditional Spain was beaten, as it were. They say, for example, that there is a famous saying in Spanish that there are always, since the French invasion, that there have always been 2 Spains. To which the traditionalists reply, no, there are no 2 Spains. There is one Spain and there is an anti-Spain. Well, that's an argument that will continue. But what has happened is that they became more anti-clerical than anti-clericalism itself. I was going to say more Catholic than the Pope, but that analogy is no longer relevant. In other words, they are continuously, since the 80s, trying to say how modern we are, how anti-Catholic we are, how anti-everything that the whole history of Spain stood for, how they repudiate that, which I think is the same that is happening in those small countries that were at one point in history part of the Soviet Union. And now, instead of accepting that once they had been part of that entity and now they are not, but continuing on, they're trying to fight that past. It's like fighting the old war. And the reason I'm saying all this is that unlike Spain, unlike Germany, unlike the Baltic nations, Russia, I see that it's not flagellating itself over it. It's just saying this has happened. And this is part of our history, those 70 years there. Don't, just hide it under the carpet. Don't try to, All right. So the difference, what I'm saying here is that the difference and the similarities between these 2 countries Spain and Russia, each at the the extreme the extreme end of Europe, at the periphery of Europe, looking at Europe, therefore, not from its center but from the periphery. That one, Spain, is denouncing its past and therefore its destiny, its future. And Russia, which has not done so, and therefore by accepting its past, it's accepting its destiny, its future. And what is that destiny? Because I see in many Catholic channels, although I don't necessarily look at these videos, about this fascination of this, sometimes it's an obsession, about this Fatima revelation, about the third secret of Fatima, something to do with Russia. I don't watch them because I don't know why, but I have felt for a long time that actually, perhaps because of all those prayers that I prayed for the conversion of Russia, I have seen it for a long time as the opposite. That perhaps it's Russia that has to save Europe, culturally speaking, but perhaps in more ways than one. Russia is accepting its religion. After, as I said in the other video, after the Orthodox Church being there in hibernation for 70 years, the people have embraced it back as part of their psychological, spiritual, mental, everything makeup. It's part of them. It's their culture, it's their history, and they're accepting it. While the rest of Europe are denouncing our traditions and our faith and all our culture that springs from that church, from that faith, from Christianity. And isn't it amazing that it is precisely Russia, which was communist for 70 years, that has embraced it and is now willing to keep it? It could be the last country not to fight against Christianity. It has already fought, as it were, by banning it during the 20th century, and now there it is, resurrected. And I wonder whether, for those who keep thinking about the last thing of Fatima, whether perhaps could it have been that Russia would save Europe, and that is why the popes did not announce it so openly as they should have done. If indeed there is some mystery to it, I don't know. And now, the war. Okay. So, regardless of where you are with this war, Russia, Ukraine, Russia, the fact remains that I think you would have to agree that Russia has exercised, I don't know whether to call it infinite, but certainly strategic patience here. What do I mean? That we have known, and obviously they have known, for a long time that it was not just one country against another country, but it was NATO was involved very actively. So it was one country, Russia, against NATO, using intelligence, weaponry, and so on against Russia. It seems that many commentators say that some of the things that NATO has done, if Russia wanted, that could have been a reason, or at least an excuse, to attack some NATO country, some NATO country, which they haven't done. And some commentators talk about perhaps provocations in order for Russia to react and go on to a world war, as it were. And a war between nuclear powers would obviously be a nuclear war. They haven't done so. Apparently, their policy has changed of late. They said, because now they know, actually, the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, if we had any doubt about this NATO involvement, in this active NATO involvement in the war, he actually he was trying to explain something else, but he didn't realize that he actually left the cat out of the bag by saying, he said, the Germans, we cannot do what the French and the English are doing, sort of launching their projectiles from Ukraine with their own military and with their own NATO intelligence and so on. Because up to that point, we thought, certainly I thought, okay, they are doing all this, but it's really, Ukrainians who are actually pushing the button of the missile or the projectile or whatever it might be. But in what Scholz said was that he actually acknowledged that it was even foreign powers that were pushing the button there. So Russia could have said, well, if you are launching this against us, we are going to launch that against you. But they haven't done so yet, but they changed the policy of late, and they say that now they would consider that particular nation which did that as an active adversary against them. They could have done that a year and a half ago, actually, but they haven't. And why not? I think that perhaps, I don't know, but I think probably they thought, look, we are winning this war in any case, so let's concentrate on finishing this rather than start another war with NATO and escalate to that point. So they looked the other way and they concentrated on this war. So that is why I said perhaps strategic patience, okay? But now that their policy has changed, imagine the European Union's Parliament. It was that by, I think, 400 members actually voted on a resolution to actually, yes, send long-range missiles to be launched against Russia. Just as Russia is saying, look, we will consider you an active adversary. I don't know whether I'm extrapolating all this into nonsense, but I think that they could have done it, and they didn't. And I think If I were Russian, I would say that we actually so far saved Europe from a European nuclear world war, because they could have retaliated against, some country or other. And once you retaliate against this particular NATO country, then NATO is actively at war. I think strategic patience is the word here. So, how do I see Russia now? I do believe that they have prevented, up to today at least, and today is the 12th of October 2024, they have prevented, because of their strategic patience or strategic knowledge, to avoid an all-out war. And I see it as the only European country who is unashamedly Christian. My goodness, I used to pray for Russia. Perhaps Russia has to pray for me now, here in the West. Who would have said it? Russia, the last resort of Christianity. The world goes round and round. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.